Hello, my name is Roman Djindjihashvili, and the topic of today's lecture is universal system against Dutch defense, Dutch opening. And actually, this is very interesting way to play against Dutch, and I adapted this system because it's very original. So if you know this system well, you will guaranteed to have a lot better knowledge of it than opponent, because not too many people play it. It's quite safe, and it may be, at times, it may be very, very explosive. It looks like White wants to play very positional game, but at some points it gets razor sharp and it gets very dangerous for Black. I like this system, and I think it's one of the top systems, and in my mind it's a top system against d4 and f5. I want to play knight f3, and most common move is knight f6, and then I want to play bishop g5. This is the system I want to talk about. But before we start looking at system, let me show you one of my games played against Russian GM. It's a tournament game played in New York, where he went g6 first because he knew I was playing this system. He wanted to prevent my bishop g5 move, and he went, since he plays Leningrad, Dutch Leningrad, and this system is very universal, so it can be played on a stone wall against the stone wall Dutch. It can be played against the regular Dutch. It can be played against Leningrad Dutch. So he played g6, which is not a good move for very concrete reasons. I played h4, and Black is now having certain problems. Knight f6, h5, knight takes h5, rook takes h5. Now this is very precise approach to g6 variation. G takes h. Now e4, taking on e4 is very bad. After knight e5, Black is lost. So bishop g7, and now very strong move, knight h4. Let me tell you what happened in this game. Castle, knight takes f5, e6, knight takes g7, queen h4 was played. Now knight cannot really go anywhere. If king takes g7, then queen takes h5, and Black's position is very bad. So my opponent played queen h4, threatening mate on f2. But after queen h4, bishop e3, king takes g7, and knight c3. White doesn't have to get mating attack. They have very, very strong positional compensation. Black has ruined pawns on a king side, and plus what White wants is actually to go queen d2, castle long, and slowly build an attack in the center and on the king side. After knight c3, d6 was played, queen d2, and in my opinion, this is already lost for Black. King g8, castles long. I don't really want to spend too much time on it knight c6, g3, queen h2, bishop h6, rook f7, and now bishop e2, and after bishop d7, bishop f3 simply wins black's queen. Rook h1 is a threat, and rook takes f7, loses to queen g5, king f7, queen g7, king e8, queen g8, and now bishop g5 check, taking all black's pieces practically. Obviously, taking on f7 is impossible. Next move, I played rook h1, and I ended up with a serious material advantage. So now let's go back, and d4, f5, knight f3. g6 is a rare move, and because of h4, it's a bad move as well. h6 is not possible in order to meet h5, g5. h6 is not possible because after knight e5, g6 pawn cannot be guarded. Black is lost. Black can be simply lost on move 4. So we have to deal with knight f6 move. And knight f6, I played a knight f6, bishop g5 was played every time in my last 30 years, maybe. Every time Dutch was played against me, I was playing bishop g5, and every time I was playing, I was preparing for it, and I didn't find any reasonably good continuation for black. Didn't find any equal position for black. There are moves like c6. There is a move like d6. On both cases, we take on f6, and it's a structurally better position for white. We can go e3 or c3, and then play e3, bishop d3, knight d2, and prepare for h3 and g4. You should look at some games in a database with this pawn structure. This favors white. Now let's go to some critical lines after bishop g5. In one game, after bishop g5, this game was played in St. Martin against another Russian GM, Mark Lesky. After bishop g5, knight e4, I played h4, he played g6, I went bishop f4, he played d6. Actually, this game was very well played by me. I don't want to go in complete details, but I will show you briefly this game. d6, knight bd2, bishop g7, e3, knight d7, knight takes c4, pawn takes c4, knight d2, knight f6, and now bishop to c4. I'm trying to prevent black from castling on a king side. If d5, I don't mind losing tempo on going to e2, because this makes our dark square bishop very strong, and also possibility of playing c4 and engage into activities on the queen side. After bishop c4, I consider d5 as anti-positional move. My opponent played c6. That's a good option. h5, and this is a very strong pawn sacrifice. Now, let me show you what happened. Knight takes h5 is out of question because rook takes and white simply wins. On king f8, queen f7, checkmate, and on king d7, queen g4 check, picking up the bishop on g7. This is very strong pawn sacrifice because bishop g4 was played, f3, ef, gf, bishop takes h5, and queen e2. I just sacrificed this pawn to completely dislocating black's bishop on h5. Now we have open h and g file. Obviously, we're going to castle queenside, and I think we have full compensation for a pawn. The interesting thing with this system that when you play it, you're guaranteed some unorthodox position that always you have clear plan. You have initiative no matter how black plays. You have initiative. Initiative doesn't always mean advantage, but you have initiative in every variation. Let's go on with the game. After queen e2, queen a5, e4, knight to d7, castle, rook to f8, bishop e3, e5, and here I made a very strong and very difficult for decision-making move. Move is d5, but it's positionally, if you think carefully, at first it leaves very bad impression, but in reality it's very powerful move. c5, king b1, rook f7, and now why did we do that? I mentioned already that black's h5 bishop is completely out of the game. So now that leaves black with very weak light squares. For full happiness now, we need our c4 bishop on h3. And that's what I'm doing now. Queen g2. My opponent never fully realized the danger of his position. b5, bishop f1. We're on the way to fulfill this plan. c4, queen e2. You see now bishop goes to h3, and that gives white very strong initiative. Now, after queen e2, knight b6, bishop h3, knight a4, bishop e6, and rook b7. Black has some threats on the queen side, but I was prepared for it, and I was ready to sacrifice a knight. But first I sacrificed the rook for a bishop to completely access black's king position. Black played queen b4 first. It's in between move, threatening mate, and knight b3. Very strong move. G takes h, queen h2, pawn takes knight, queen takes h5 check, king d8, queen h4 check, king e8, I gave another check. We repeated position a couple of times, but I never repeated it third time. So, and after king e8, I played c takes b. Black has an extra rook, but they are absolutely lost in this position. cb, knight c5, queen takes h7. White doesn't have to rush in this position. Black's king is absolutely in dangerous position. Queen on b4 has absolutely no future. Rooks on b7 and a8 are totally inactive. And white can bring the rook on g1, bishop on g5, king is great danger, position is lost. That's a positional sacrifice of whole rook. Now, after knight takes c6, d5 was played, trying to get queen back into the game. And after d5, ed, rook to d8, bishop g5, very strong move again. And after bishop g5, here, there is no defense by black. Queen d6, queen g6 check, king f8, bishop takes d8, queen takes d8, d6, and after bishop f6, d7, creating deadly threat of a mate on f7, and if queen e7, rook g1. And black can resign here. Actually, black resigned move before. And on queen takes c6, simply we make a queen and win the queen. It's a very, very good and very instructive game. We got very good position in the opening as well. Now, I want to show you some analysis that I made, which I think they are absolutely fascinating. d4 knight, d4 f5, knight f3, knight f6, bishop g5, knight e4, h4. And a lot of people told me that after c5, black has to have good position. Queen b6 is coming, and bishop on g5 is out of the game. And here I'm offering absolutely innovating idea that I started developing before the computer era. I never had a luxury of analyzing it with a Fritz or Ripka. But then when Ripka came along, I did analyze it with Ripka. And Ripka agreed with me. She made a couple of refined points, and she agreed that white has absolutely tremendous attack. And here, what I came up with many years ago. In this position, after c5, we go e3, and on queen b6, we go c3, knight c3. Every engine computer program offers b3 move, including Ripka in this position. But Ripka has to be given the idea, and then she develops it perfectly. Knight c3 is very powerful move. Queen takes b2, knight takes e4, pawn takes e4, and knight to d2. This is very dangerous position for black. cd, bishop c4. And now black has an option to play de or to go e6, trying for d5. Let's see what happens if d takes e. pawn takes on e3, and now if black plays e6, castle, that's a very strong move. Now you see how all pieces absolutely in a dangerous position for white, and next move will be knight takes e4. On d5, white will play knight takes e4, and obviously taking will lead to immediate checkmate. And if black plays instead queen e5, then anyway, knight takes e4, because queen takes e4 loses instantly after bishop d3 and queen h5. That leads to a checkmate. Now, given these variations, 𝐓𝐡𝐞 for a while, she was in this position. She was saying that knight c3 is not good move because of queen b2. But when she took considerable time after knight d2, she did agree that black is in a lot of trouble. Knight takes, now d takes cd, bishop c4, de, fe. And now if h6, then no, queen h5 is not going to do anything because of king d8. Then rook b1, queen c3, rook b3, queen e5, bishop f4, and on queen a5, rook b5, queen a3, and simply castle. This is actually a spectacular position. Every white piece is developed. Every black piece is undeveloped. Black has 2 extra pawns, but black is absolutely lost. There is no way black can defend its position here. If you play this position and you don't win against anybody in the world, that does not mean that position is not good. That means you miss something. You have to trust your judgment. Position like this, with such a lead in development, has to have decisive continuation. If you don't see it, get help from someone who will find it. If you and eventually that will help your intuition. There is no way this position can be other than hopeless for black. Now let's go to a couple of other options by black. Okay, d4, f5, knight f3, knight f6, bishop g5, e6. I like playing against this move. And again, I want to point after g6, bishop takes f6, ef. These positions are always very good for white. You play bishop d3 here, actually on c6, for example, bishop d3, and you try to play for h3 and g4 and castling on a queen side. You have to get games played with that pawn structure, because we are not going to do it at this point now. So let me show you the move that I like to play against. On e6, I play knight d2. My idea to play e4. If black goes d5, preventing e4, then white has very simple plan. e3, and on bishop e7, we can go knight e5. If black castles, it's very positional, strategical plan. Bishop d3, and on knight d7, f4. This guarantees you some advantage. Knight e4, bishop takes e7, queen takes e7, castle. You have superior bishop and an undisputed advantage. The plan how to play this position, you go king h1, rook g1, and go for g4. There is another way to play this position. If they go d5 against you. If they go d5, you can go e3 and c4. Or go knight e5, and when black plays bishop e7, e3, castle, then you simply go bishop d3, and on knight d7, knight f3. This is also good advantage for white. The same position, like we said, we're going to play without f4. So d5 is not the move to be expected in this position. But after bishop e7, taking an e4 will give you certain advantage. Now, how do we play this position? First of all, how does black play this position? They have two ways to play, d6 and fe. If fe, knight takes e4, castle, bishop d3, followed by queen e2 and castle long, for example, knight c6, c3, and on some move like d6, queen e2, followed by castling long, or maybe even queen c2, creating immediate threat of attacking h7, and followed by h4 later. It may be very dangerous for black. I remember recommending this system, bishop takes f6, bishop takes f6, and e4. I remember recommending it to Karpov. And I said, if they go e5, d5, go e5. And he played game against Topalov with the same system. And I remember he won it like in 19 or 20 moves with absolutely one-sided game. So the other option is d6. Well, on d6, what I would recommend, that's what I did actually in one of my games, bishop d3, knight c6 was played, and on c3, my opponent went e5. Looks like he wants to open position quickly. I played d takes e. Now, if knight takes e5, I will take simply on e5 and take on f5, which will give me a better game. But what happened on d takes c, black takes d takes c, attacking bishop and taking advantage of it, and now white cannot play e takes f. But after queen c2, black really has a problem with f5 pawn. Taking on e4 gives white huge positional advantage. So in a game was f4, and after g3, fg, hg, white has very big advantage. Castling long, open h-file, bishop goes to c4, big positional advantage, and white, I won the game very quickly and without any problem at all. So this is quick overview. Of course, there may be some other ways to play, but I spent quite a bit of time on this system, and I don't know of any safe way for black to equalize position. There is no equality. And comparing to the other systems, it's very easy to study. And I hear a lot that some people, they don't like to play main line of Dutch defense. And they, in fact, they don't like to play main line of any defense, of any opening. Well, this is a good way for those people to play. Actually, I developed this system myself for white. Not because I didn't want to get any main line, because in any opening, I try to develop something on my own. A lot of things, they don't work, and then I just simply give up and abandon. But this is one of them that stuck with me for decades. And of course, it's been updated, upgraded, getting more analysis, more sharp variations, and became very interesting. So for now, you see, I gave you preview. Actually, in one lecture, that's all we can do on one opening. And you play bishop g5, you're guaranteed to get fresh, interesting, and very, very exciting positions. At the same time, you're going to avoid some main lines, and there is a good chance your opponent will be caught off guard. So thank you very much, and have fun playing this system against Dutch.